Turkey Day. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
It's a blast playing on Thanksgiving. I love it.
Thanksgiving it's a great day for football.
It's Leon left. No!
He plays in there. Heads is the call. He said heads.
He said tails. Bettis is out there yelling at him. He said, I called tails.
Oh, he did call tails.
Mark Sanchez scrambles up the middle, lost the football. He ran right to the back of Brandon Moore.
To play in the Thanksgiving game, period, it's a great atmosphere.
Obviously, this time of year, special for the organization and fans.
And I think our guys ought to be excited about it. It's Thanksgiving night. Where else, would you want to be?
It's my favorite holiday. Happy Thanksgiving. Welcome into First Take and appreciate you spending part of your holiday here with us on First Take. I'm Molly Qerim here holding things down in Bristol, and I want to wish a very happy Thanksgiving to my guys, Stephen A. and Max Kellerman and their families. Good morning, gentlemen.
What up? What up? What up? How you doing? How you do? How you do?
It is the greatest holiday in the world. And what else can you say? Fried turkey, by the way. I heard your conversation with Cannell. Fried turkey is the best on Thanksgiving. No ketchup.
I'm with you, Max. No question.
Listen. It's the 3 F's, y'all. Family, football, and food. Actually, let me put for food before football because the food comes first. No. It's family, food, and football. Michael Irvin basically putting it out there how it's good for the Dallas Cowboys to lose a game before these playoffs begin because we don't want to run into the playoffs, just run the table for the rest of the season because that'll amplify the level of pressure that's going in Dallas's direction. So who am I to disagree with the playmaker? I mean, if you're going to lose a game, why not lose on Thanksgiving Day? 3 days rest because you did play Sunday, just like the Redskins played on Sunday. You beat this team early in the season when some people think you should not have been, even though Dak Prescott came and handled his business in that fourth quarter. But in the end, I'm thinking about Kirk Cousins and the way that he is playing. And we will talk about him a little bit later on in the show, by the way. You got Kirk Cousins, okay? You got Kelly who can run the football. You got Garcon, even though we don't know whether or not Deshaun Jackson is going to be available. I think he will be. Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis, the offensive line relatively protecting Kirk Cousins. I think that the Redskins will find a way to win this game. And I think it's going to be relatively high scoring. I can see the Redskins winning this game. I'm going to pick them to win 35-30 at Texas Stadium, Jerry's billion-dollar playpen. That's what I see going down today because the Redskins offense is going to find a way to get it done, plain and simple.
I take no pleasure in saying this, but you're wrong. I wish you were right, but you're wrong. The Cowboys are going to win this game. They're at home, and the bigger deal here, and by the way, Washington's complaining. They had to play the late game on Sunday, the whole thing. But the bigger thing here is, as I say all the time when we talk about the NFL, there are only a few actually good teams, fundamentally good teams, and only a few fundamentally bad ones. Most of them fall in the middle somewhere, and usually the ones with the better records have gotten a little lucky. I'm not saying Washington's a bad team. They're a fairly typical NFL team that's maybe gotten a little bit lucky. The Cowboys, I hate to say it, are an actually good team. They're really good. They're one of the handful of teams that have distinguished themselves from the rest of the NFL. And they're at home. And you know what it's going to mean when you play Dak Prescott the second time? It's going to mean you sit there and go, damn, he really is good. It's not just that we didn't see him before. This guy can play. He's a stud. You've seen that since the first game in the preseason where you were able to watch him. It was obvious that's a good player, and he's just gotten better and better and better. I know Cousins coming off that big game against the Packers. They're a hot team right now. But, Stephen A., a high-scoring game against this Cowboy. It's not even really against the Cowboys' defense, which has been very good against the run, by the way. And that's been a big key to the Washington success recently, opening up the passing game, et cetera, for Cousins. The key is the offense. How do you have a high-scoring game when this Dallas offense is playing ball control with Ezekiel Elliott behind that offensive line? How do you get a high-scoring game?
Well, I think you're going to get a high-scoring game because I think that the Redskins are going to give up some points, but at the same time, they're going to retaliate. They're going to answer by putting up some points themselves. And quite honestly, I think the Dallas Cowboys have played better on the road by and large since Jerry World has opened up than they do on their home turf. I can see them on a day like today where they're a bit suspect. 3 days rest. It's a heated rivalry. We all know that. Dak Prescott and those boys doing those things. But I could see the Redskins pretty much stacking the line of scrimmage, trying to take away the running game and daring the Dallas Cowboys to beat them through the air. I could see the Dallas Cowboys obliging because Dak Prescott, Des Bryant, Cole Beasley, who had 5 receptions for 75 yards in their first meeting, I could see them making some noise. But in the end, the rivalry is what it is. It's always tough. You know, when these two teams go up against one another, actually not always, but most of the time, it's very, very tough. It's very, very hard to see one team running away from the other in a heated rivalry of this nature. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be a tough. But I think some breaks is going to go somebody's way. And on this particular day, I think it's going to go the Redskins' way. Plus, I'm allergic to picking the Cowboys unless I absolutely have to because it's too obvious. I don't think this is obvious. I think this is something that could be nip and tuck. I think this could be a thriller. And I could see the Dallas Cowboys messing themselves up at some key pivotal moment for the Redskins to walk away with this victory. I'm rolling with the Redskins. I believe they will get it done.
Listen, you know, you always say a broken clock is right twice a day. I'm hoping that you're right about this twice a season, or twice more at least this season since their first loss to the Giants, because you say this a lot of weeks, but the accident doesn't seem to be happening, Stephen A. They're fundamentally a good team. And by the way, the Ravens tried, they dared Dak Prescott to beat him from the pocket, and guess what he did? He beat him. Hooking up with Des Bryant, by the way, who's made an enormous impact.
They also scored just 17 points. Don't compare the Ravens to the Redskins offensively because we know they're not in the same stratosphere.
Okay, but they're a lot better defensively. A lot better defensively.
Sure.
And Dak was able to put up 27 on them. I mean, listen. Eventually, what does an accident happening to the Cowboys even mean? They lose a game? I'll define accident waiting to happen for the Cowboys. They got to lose before Week 13. The Giants have to keep winning, and then the Giants have to beat them on Week 13 to take the lead in the division because they would own both games against the Cowboys plus have the same record. That would be an accident.
About the Giants.
Well, I'm saying that would be an accident, but just losing
with your Redskins.
But that's what I'm saying. That's an accident. Or the Cowboys get all the way to the playoff. You know, they do win the division, and then they lose in their first game. That's an accident. Even if they did lose to Washington, that's not an accident happening. That's just like the second loss of the season. But I don't even see that. I think the Cowboys take care of business at home today in a great slate of Thanksgiving Day games, by the way.
Well, first of all, as expansive as your vocabulary is, Max Kellerman, leave the definition of an accident waiting to happen for me. Don't try to redefine it. I will define it. I say an accident waiting to happen when I talk about the Dallas Cowboys. It means that at the worst possible moment, something will get in their way. It doesn't even have to be anything on the field with these guys. It's always something at the most inopportune of times to sort of ruin their seasons. A loss is not necessarily an accident waiting to happen per se, but how you go down may very well be the case. And we never know with the Cowboys. We never, ever know. And that's what I love about it. That's why I'm sitting back here and just waiting on this Thanksgiving Day, on this Turkey Day, when everybody in the Dallas Cowboys nation is always hyped. Because for some reason, they're the ones, along with the Lions, are the ones that play every Thanksgiving Day. And you got the Thursday night, you got the late night game, which is the Steelers and the Colts. But for the most part, obviously, every Thanksgiving, it's the Detroit Lions and it's the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not sure they deserve that. They certainly haven't deserved that in recent memory. They do now. But with the Cowboys Nation all hype, looking forward to watching them win yet another game, go for their 10th straight and all of that other stuff. This is kind of the perfect day to mess up everything for the Cowboy fans out there. It would, could you imagine how Cowboy fans are going to feel if on Turkey Day, on Thanksgiving Day, during the holidays, with everybody hanging around one another at the television and beyond, and all of that stuff with family members coming from all over the place, and then to watch the Cowboys ruin things by losing? I can see the Cowboys doing that. It would be special.
Rooted harder.
I have no problem with that.
I've never rooted harder for you to be right, but given that quarterback, Dak Prescott, that offensive line, that running back, Ezekiel Elliott, those receivers, the rapidly improving defense throughout the year, particularly against the run, which is elite, and they're at home, I'm afraid, as usual, you're wrong.
As usual, really? Please.
All right, let's leave it there. Stephen A. with the upset pick. Dallas is favored by 6. We'll get into the other 2 NFL games on our Thanksgiving slate in just a bit. But first, gentlemen, to the association. Yesterday, we asked if it's time to take the Lakers seriously with 8 wins heading into last night's matchup against the Warriors at Oracle. This is what Stephen A. had to say before the game.
The Lakers will get destroyed tonight.
Well, second of back-to-back against the Warriors is not a great format.
It's not about the second of back-to-back. It's the fact that you beat them by 20 when they came to L.A. That's why. It's going to be a bad night for the Lakers tonight. A bad night.
So, as Stephen A. predicted, that annihilation, it happened. Steph Curry led all scorers with 31 points as the Warriors demolished the purple and gold 149-106. Max, after the Lake Show's 43-point loss, how are you feeling about those baby Lakers?
Fine. I'm feeling fine about them. By the way, Stephen A., Nostradamus, it doesn't exactly take a genius to look into a crystal ball and see that the Lakers were going to get slaughtered at Oracle, second of back-to-back. Well, of course, everyone knew they were going to lose that game big. Of course they did. You blame it because they're playing them again.
Get slaughtered.
I know that. You said it. Who needed to say it? Of course, it's obvious. Go
ahead.
I needed to tell you they were going to. Listen, second of back-to-back on the road in the NBA is the biggest lock in sports betting. Like every professional gambler knows this. If a team is playing the second of back-to-back on the road, they're like 70-something% likely to lose. And that's got to be like more than a 10-point difference in terms of how efficiently the team usually scores and how many points they allow. I would take off at least 10 points from a score going in knowing a team's playing the second of back-to-back. But it's not just that on the road. It's that Luke Walton's returning home to Oracle. Like, that's a big emotional deal. It's that the Lakers waxed them at Staples early in the season. You know the Warriors are looking for revenge. It's that the Warriors are either the best or second best team in basketball. We all know that in spite of the Clippers' record. They're a bomb squad. Of course they're just a better team than the Lakers. It's that a guy like Nick Young, who steals his teammates' pass, travels, and then gets credit for the game winner the next night on the second of back-to-back on the road. That dude ain't showing. None of these guys showed up for that game. But that's the league. Second of back-to-back on the road, you are going to lose, usually big. And if you're playing the best team in basketball, arguably, and you wax them and embarrass them by 20 early in the season, and you have your coaches, their former assistant coaches, like everyone's up for the game, yeah, no kidding they're going to get slaughtered. The baby Lakers are going to be fine this season. They're going to win about as much as they lose.
Well, first of all, I want the audience out there, America out there, we really appreciate Spock Kellerman giving us that breakdown. So logical, so unemotional, so pragmatic. It's just beautiful to hear you articulate your thoughts on basketball in such pragmatic fashion. I'm so touched by it. I really am. Here's the reality, Max Kellerman. It's not about them getting slaughtered in terms of losing to a superior team or whatever. What did I say to you about the Lakers in terms of why I'm not sold on them just yet? Let's pump the brakes and think about this. Max Kellerman, forget the fact that they lost by 40 points. Forget the fact that Kevin Durant and those guys looked absolutely something. Kevin Durant, we'll talk about them a little bit later. He looks sensational. I mean, averaging 27 points on 57% shooting on this season. This is the kind of stuff that I was complaining about when he decided to go to Golden State. The dude ain't even shooting 17 times a game, and he's averaging 27. This is just ridiculous. But we'll talk about him a little bit later. Here's what I want you to pay attention to. Forget the fact that the Lakers lost by 40 and all of that stuff. Dissect why. Don't think about the back-to-backs or anything like that.
You want an answer, or is that a rhetorical question?
It is a rhetorical question. You've spoken enough. Listen, you got Kevin Durant, you got Steph Curry, you got Klay Thompson, all of whom shot better than 60% from the field, going up against a Lakers team that came into the game ranked 28th defensively. This is my issue with them. I'm saying to you, I'm a big fan of Luke Walton. I ain't worried about him. He's the right man for the job. He'll be just fine. I know they've got young talent on the come up. But when you are young and learning how to play and learning how to win, but you don't play defense, that's a bad sign. Because defense is about effort and it's about coaching. And to some degree, it's about knowing how to communicate on the floor together. You have to be able to stop people. This Lakers team, if they play defense, they would automatically be a playoff team. Because I think Luke Walton would get them flowing offensively. But when you are ranked 28th defensively, you have limitations. That's my issue with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Warriors aside and all of that other stuff, it's just that defensively, Max, I got huge questions about them.
Of course they're not a good defensive team, and first of all, they don't have a lot of good defensive players. And defense is much more than just effort. It's also knowledge and communication and some degree natural ability, not to the extent maybe offense is, but that also plays into it. The problem with evaluating these Lakers defensively on the second of back-to-back on the road in an emotionally charged atmosphere against the Warriors is the only way to defend against the Warriors is loud and constant communication. Because they have, and Luke Walton was a part of this culture, and he's bringing it to the Lakers now, which is one of the reasons they're successful. They have superstars willing to set off-ball screens. They have unselfish play everywhere. It's one of the reasons that Kevin Durant wanted to go there. He wanted to play with guys like that who are willing to sacrifice in that way. They really have, when they're going well, the Warriors do, an unstoppable offense. There is no stopping that offense. But if you want to stop, if you want to even try to stop it, you have to be energized and you have to communicate more than anything else. And the Lakers just seemed like they didn't want it. They didn't care. They knew they were going to lose. They weren't communicating, and they mailed it in last night. So they lost. They almost gave up 150 points in a basketball game. But that's going to happen to other teams, too. You know, the Warriors, just watch what the Warriors do to teams playing the second of back-to-back at Oracle.
Listen, I'm on the record, and we'll talk about this later on in terms of how the Warriors have contaminated this season. But let's be clear, 150 damn points? I mean, it's Thanksgiving, so I'm really trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice to everybody but Cowboys fans. I'm not going to be nice to them ever. Anybody but Cowboys fans, anybody but them, I'll try to be nice. But damn near 150 points? Come on now. I mean, I don't care how bad you play. I don't care that you get blown out. You're not going to see many teams giving up 150 points in 48 minutes of a regulation game, of a regular season game. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
I'll say something else about the Lakers. Let me say something else about the Lakers, because when you play at a faster pace, I agree with you about their offense, about their defense, and the same thing with D'Antoni teams. They just don't care about defense. But the thing to look at is not simply, not defending the Lakers' defensive performance last night. I'm just saying generally. The thing to look at is not simply the number of points you allow. Because in a faster-paced game with more possessions, there will be more points. There will tend to be. The question is your defensive efficiency. And I believe, or I predict, that by the end of this season, the Lakers' defensive efficiency will look a lot better than the actual number of points allowed, because Luke Walton's going to have them playing at a fast pace.
Oh, I'm so touched, Max. You really stepped out on a limb. Hold on, you really stepped out on a limb there. 28th ranked defense in the NBA. By the way, just gave up 149 points. And you're sitting here talking about,
they will improve defensively.
They're going to look better. Really? That's where you're going? I mean, that's really stepping out, Max. That's really stepping out. That's really stepping out. They're going to look better. Can they look much worse? Can they look much worse defensively?
Am I talking to the hot take expert who predicted boldly yesterday that the Warriors would beat the Lakers big at home, second of back-to-back on the road for the Lakers? Am I talking to that guy?
Actually,
let me get my oven mitts ready for that hot take.
If you don't mind, I would appreciate it if you call me by my real name. It's not Nostradamus. It's Stephen Naismith. Stephen Naismith. That works better. I like that. I like that. It's not Nostradamus. It's Stephen Naismith. Okay, that's all right. I'm just saying, let's get it right. Let's get it right.
All right. So the Lakers will get the Warriors again Friday for the rubber match at Staples. We'll see if the home cooking helps them out. And now, What, Stephen A? Yes,
Molly, by the way,
yes.
that Stephen Naismith only applies to the regular season and the playoffs. Don't get me into my finals predictions. They've been awful because I get emotional come to NBA finals. I get emotional.
No.
That doesn't count.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Wait, I just want to get this straight. So you're like that dude who you're Clayton Kershaw. You're really good until the people need you the most, and then you choke. What's up with that?
They don't need me the most during the finals. No, it's not during the finals.
I always figured you'd be a finals performer. No. Damn.
I'm about where I want to be. I'm about where I want to be at the finals. I'm about my social life.
Don't worry, everybody.
He's a Peyton Manning, Max. He just does the regular season. No humble pie on this show. All right, we've covered one of today's 3 NFL games. Coming up, we'll break down the others. No Andrew Luck for Ben Roethlisberger to outduel. So is this a must-win for the black and yellow Stephen A. Steelers? We'll tell you that next. And just 3 weeks ago, the Lions got the best of Sam Bradford as the Vikings won in overtime. Will the Vikes get revenge? Stay tuned.
First Take is presented by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here.
Let's be honest. When you hear Big Ben Roethlisberger and Andrew Luck are facing off on Turkey Day, you expect an aerial attack. Unfortunately for Colts fans, they won't be seeing their Pro Bowl quarterback when the black and yellow head to Naptown. Luck was ruled out because he didn't practice all week after suffering a concussion on a sack in Sunday's game against Tennessee. Scott Tolzien is expected to get the nod. Stephen Morris has been elevated from the practice squad to back up Tolzien. Both teams are 5-5. Oh, Max Kellerman, with your MVP candidate not playing and Andrew Luck, is this a must-win for the Steelers?
No, it's not. But first, let me say, Andrew Luck's MVP candidacy ain't looking good right now. I was still holding out hope he could get really hot and they could make the playoffs.
You're coming around.
Listen, if he doesn't play in this game, not only does he have less value, but if they win, it looks bad for him. And if they lose, it's going to be that much tougher to make the postseason, to make the playoffs. No, it's not a must-win for the Steelers because they're 5-5, and so are the Ravens. The AFC North is weak right now. And when you look at their schedule, really the difference in their schedule, both fairly typical NFL schedules the rest of the way, but when they play again, it's at home for the Steelers when the Ravens and Steelers play, and the Steelers get the Browns at home. So that really is, even if they lose today, that really is the difference. In more or less evenly matched teams, one team gets the other, the divisional rival with the same record, gets the other at home and gets arguably the worst team in football also at home later in the season. That gives the edge to the Steelers. Even if they lose today, they can still make the playoffs. And so therefore, by definition, it's not a must-win.
Max, you need prayer. You're totally wrong on this one, and I don't even understand how you can come to the conclusion that you just came to. Let me be very, very clear. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you can't beat Scott Tolzien, I don't even want to talk about you no more. I mean, if they lose to this dude, we might have to talk about them tomorrow because we're going to revisit the results of today's games. But that's about it. I don't even want to talk about the Steelers anymore. Now, you can't beat Scott Tolzien? You can't? Yeah. You got to be kidding me. I didn't want to hear it. That's number one. Number two, we got to pay attention to what's going on with the Steelers here. Since 2014, this is a team that's averaged 32 points per game at home, only 22 on the road. This year alone on the road, 3 points at Philly, 15 points at Miami, only 2 first downs after 3 quarters at Baltimore. And by the way, they're the only offense this season that couldn't put up 2 touchdowns in a game against the Cleveland Browns. I mean, they've got to get this thing right. They're the 23rd ranked rushing attack. How is that possible when Le'Veon Bell is your running back? I don't understand what's going on here. I'd like to see more of Sammy Coates. He's been, he hasn't been utilized as extensively as he was early in the season. 2 broken fingers or an index finger. I don't know what reports are out there that are true, but that's what they were saying. So we've got those issues to deal with. But if you're the Steelers, offensively, you're going up against a team in the Indianapolis Colts that ranks dead last against the pass. And on the defensive side of the ball, you're going up against some dude named Scott Tolzien. You got to be kidding me. They better win this game. They better win this game.
As a Steelers fan, you can get emotional and stand on principle. Like, if you can't beat Scott Tolzien, that says bad things about the team. By the way, you're right. It says bad things about them, but you can still make the playoffs. So how is it must win? Because you're not comparing yourself to the Colts. You're really comparing yourselves to the Ravens. And the question is, can you make the playoffs in a division where at the moment you're tied with Baltimore? So what I'm saying is this. The Ravens have an elite defense and a subpar offense. The Steelers have a subpar defense and a good offense. And what you pointed out about where they are running the ball and why aren't they doing more in the passing game actually points to the fact that there's upside there. A great future Hall of Fame quarterback, arguably the best wideout in the league, arguably the best running back in the league, and I would say when he's healthy, he is, if you adjust for things like the offensive line and the run blocking and all that stuff. A very good offensive line in Pittsburgh. There is room for growth there. There's reasonable expectation that the offense can get better. And it's around 12th right now. That's 10th or 12th, so that's like upper third-ish. And it can get even better. It can rise to become elite. I don't think the Ravens can play defense any better than they're playing, and they just don't really have the offensive weapons. So when you look at that and then look at the schedule, whatever you want to say about getting emotional about not being able to beat Scott Tolzien and what that means to you, fact is they can still make the playoffs.
The Steelers have the Indianapolis Colts on the road today. You picking them to beat your Giants next week?
No, I hope not. Let's see what the Giants look like this week.
Okay, that's fine. I thought so. After that, they got road games.
It's an even matchup, though. Steelers-Giants is an even matchup.
Hold on. I gave you a chance to answer the question. You gave me your answer. Don't couch it now. Hold on. Let me get to the other games. We got at Buffalo, at Seattle, then a home game against Baltimore and Cleveland to close out the season. If you can't beat Scott Tolzien and the worst-ranked pass defense in the NFL, why should I believe you're going to win these games?
All right, let me ask you this. The Ravens get the Bengals at home this week. Is that a must-win for them? Because if it's a must-win for them, then this can't also be a must-win for the Steelers. Then they get the Dolphins at home, winners of 5 straight. Then they have to play the Pats on the road. Then they get the Eagles at home. Then they close out with the Steelers on the road and the Bengals on the road. In fact, they have the tougher schedule, not by much, but the difference is they're going to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh also gets the Browns at home. I'm telling you, you can't argue that this is must-win for the Steelers if you also want to argue that it's going to be must-win for the Ravens. Can't be must-win for both because the division's coming down to those two.
Well, first of all, we disagree with that, number one. Number two, and more importantly, I'm looking at it from a talent perspective in this regard. If you can't beat Scott Tolzien, who's also saddled with the worst pass defense in the NFL, what I am simply saying is that I don't have any belief that you'll be able to beat any of those teams to follow on your schedule. I could see Baltimore going back and forth because their defense is their defense, but their offense is somewhat suspect. But what I'm saying about the Steelers is that as suspect as their defense is, everything. Talk about the perfect opponent to have. Pick your poison. Andrew Luck can't play. Scott Tolzien has to fill in. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you've got a defense in Indianapolis that has the worst pass defense, but you've got Antonio Brown and Wheaton and the crew and Jones and everybody and Coates and everybody else. If you can't beat this team tonight, to me, it is an indictment against who everyone thought you were as the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's all I'm saying. Scott Tolzien.
Well, that's different than saying must win.
Tolzien,
what you're saying is you want to see some. You want to see some evidence that the Steelers are who you hope they could be. A must-win game by almost any definition. I'm not talking about people who say take it
you
literally.
Always make up your definitions. You always want to sit there and say about any definition.
I'm going to give you a very good one.
Max has his own definition of things.
Because I have the best definitions.
I can't reach my dictionary. I wish I could reach my dictionary so I could pick it out.
Here's the next best here's the best definition on this topic. Next topic, I'll give you another best definition. But for this one, I'm not one of those people.
Thank you for admitting it. Thank you for admitting it.
I'm not one of those people who says must win means only when you can be mathematically eliminated. That's ridiculous. You are not to take must win literally. It's a part of language. You use hyperbole to make your point. Must win means if your team, or if this team loses that game, it's over for making the playoffs. You know, for all intents and purposes, it's over. That's not this. That's basically the best working definition of must win I've heard.
That's
Give me
your
a better
definition.
It'd be an embarrassing loss, Max. That's for sure.
My
definition,
loss,
correct.
My definition is there are pivotal games in a season. There are moments that ultimately define who you are and what you are made of in my mind. That's what I believe. I'm looking at the Steelers' schedule. I'm looking at how the Steelers have looked already. I'm looking at the troubles that they have had. I'm looking at the adversity they have had to overcome. And I'm saying, if you are the Steelers and you lose this particular game to this particular quarterback, to this particular secondary and defense against the pass, to me, I have no faith in you. That's what I'm saying. That's my definition today of what this means in terms of this being a must-win for the Steelers. That's what I believe.
Hang in. I'm sorry. I'm told that we have to reject that definition. It's not good enough. But, you know, thanks for playing.
All right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Coming up, can you feel the love? Kevin Love went absolutely bananas in the first quarter last night, scoring 34 points. Does he finally look like he's a part of the big three? King James, what do you think of Love's performance?
The ball was moving, the ball was popping, and obviously we had a huge hot hand. That was lightning. So we just kept giving him the ball, kept finding him, and the guys just, he was just knocking him down.
They say all you need is love. Just ask the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are feeling the love all night long. Kevin Love showing up and showing out, dropping 40 points, 34 in the first quarter alone. That's the second highest scoring quarter in NBA history. Stephen A., with that, I ask you, can Kevin Love make the Cavs truly a big three?
You know what? I don't think so. Listen, this is no knock against Kevin Love whatsoever. His basketball IQ is off the charts. He's incredibly skilled. He's a big-time player. He's averaging 21 and 10 this season. He's clearly being casted correctly, used correctly by a young, great coach in Tyronn Lue. This is not a knock on Love whatsoever. I've just always viewed Love as a better 1 or 2 option, pretty much primarily a 2 option, as opposed to a 3. I know he can shoot those threes, as evidenced last night when he hit 8 of them in the first quarter. LeBron James had 6 of his 13 assists by feeding Love all on threes. It would have been nice to see LeBron James keep giving it to him so he could have dropped 50, but that's a subject for another day. At the end of the day, Love is a big-time player, somebody that I think has been underappreciated by myself included at times, as well as everybody else. He's a big-time player, but I do think being that third wheel is very, very difficult for him. And even though Tyronn Lue gets him the first touch of every game, make sure he has him more assertive and active because he's getting him the ball on the blocks and he's doing some things. I think against some of the better teams in the league who actually know how to get out on the perimeter and defend perimeter shots, we're not going to see something like this from him. And as a result, even though I don't think it would be as bad offensively, Max, as it was in the finals where he was relatively impotent offensively, but he did make noise defensively and with rebounding in terms of his point production against some of the elite teams that can get out there and defend the perimeter. I think in order for Love to be that big-time dude that we saw in Minnesota, that we're watching averaging 21 and 10 now, I think he'd have to be the secondary offensive option, which obviously he would not be with LeBron and Kyrie there. That's my only trepidation, but it's no knock against him whatsoever because I know the brother can play ball. It's just that when you're that gifted, you're usually not the third option.
The answer is yes, he can be one of a big three by the definition of big three, because a lot of people didn't think Chris Bosh was a big three with LeBron and Wade. And Bosh has never been as good a player as LeBron or Wade have been. I mean, he's just not as good. But he was good enough to be considered one of a big three. And a lot of casual fans were fooled by Bosh because they would say, oh, 8 points, 10 rebounds, or something like 7 rebounds. That's they're not getting their money's worth. But Bosh was playing defense. He was doing every single thing the coach asked him to do, stretching it out when they needed to, all those kind of things. He was doing everything that the coach wanted him to do. And so, in fact, he was a huge part of their success, which is why Spoelstra and Riley would say, actually, Bosh is our most indispensable player. And at the time, I was having arguments on the radio and on Sports Nation with people. People were blowing me up on Twitter when I would say Bosh is better than Kevin Love because Kevin Love was putting up 25 and 12. Oh, Bosh is 8 points and 7 rebounds last night. You see that? Yeah, it's the way the coach is using him. So, yes, it's not a question of, are they a big three? It's a question of, how is Lou going to use Kevin Love? When he's the primary scoring option, he will appear to be a top 5 player to some misguided folks who thought he was. He was never a top 5 player. But he's an all-star caliber player who can shoot the three well for his position, though not as well as he once did because the rest of the league has caught up at that position more, who can post, who can pass the ball, who has a high basketball IQ, as you said, never going to be a good defender, but he knows what he's doing. He can absolutely be part of a big three. And the way they've used him, he's kind of overkill for what the Cavs need, at least offensively for him. He can do everything they need him to do offensively and more. The question as to whether people will catch on that he's part of a big three is if they ask him to do more, because he's capable of doing it. But on a team with LeBron and Kyrie, you don't always need him to do it. This is the issue with basketball. There's only one ball. So statistics of individual players, the kind of counting numbers, points, rebounds, assists, don't always tell you the full story and can mislead fans. Kevin Love is perfectly capable of being one of a big three in Cleveland.
He's capable of it, but again, because of his talents and what it commands, a third option leaves me cause to pause in that regard. And I think his record thus far in Cleveland proves as much in terms of his level of production offensively. Having said all of that, I'd also like to add, I'm not going to get beside myself because there are 30 teams in the NBA, Max Kellerman. Do you know where the Portland Trail Blazers rank defensively? That would be 30. Dead last. And so when I look at it from that perspective, again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Love. He can play the game of basketball, high basketball IQ. He's certainly a big boy that could shoot. I can't stand the fact that he seems to have lost so much weight because when he was in Minnesota, talk about a walking double-double and somebody that just banged. But there's no reason to make that argument now because he's averaging 20 and 10, so he's still finding a way to get things done. I just think that watching Cleveland, as much as I've watched Cleveland, seeing how much LeBron and Kyrie are usually the ones who get it going. When I'm looking at Love going up against elite talent, particularly individuals with size who can get out on the perimeter, what are you going to do then? That's the question mark in terms of a big three. But I'm not trying to knock him in any way because I know the brother can play.
Not in terms of the way their games are, but in terms of their value. Kevin Love is a poor man's Carmelo Anthony in the sense that he is an offensive weapon. If he is your primary scoring option, you're a 500 team. But a 500 team in the West, even when you don't have a great cast around him. This is a damn good player. If he's your secondary scoring option, if he's your second scoring option, I don't think you're going to win a championship. If he's your tertiary, your third option on offense, you're a championship team. But if that's the case, it will not look like he's a very good player. What do you care more about? The results on the court, winning, or the kind of statistical profile and the kind of stuff that makes fans acknowledge how much of a contribution you're making? Again, it's overkill to have him in that position. He's much more than just a quote-unquote stretch four, but his talent enables the Cavs to do things if they want. And I don't think there's a way around considering him a big three. Look, if Carmelo Anthony joins some big, and you love his offense, obviously, Stephen A., his ability to score the ball, but if he joined some team and was not the primary scoring option and they won a title, he might wind up with 17 points a game, something like that. Would that mean he's not part of a big three? Is that just based on, if he is part of that big three, is that just based on his reputation at the time he got traded to that team? The question is not what's the statistical profile. The question is what is the player's actual value and what are they capable of doing? So the answer in Kevin Love is yes. By the standards of Big Three, you're an all-star caliber player playing with two other guys like that or better. The answer is yes on Kevin Love.
Well, I look at Kevin Love. I have a problem with the comparison to Carmelo Anthony because Kevin Love can't put the ball on the floor like that.
No, right. Carmelo's better. Poor man's. He's a poor man. Not even in terms of their game.
I got it.
Look, if Carmelo Anthony's your primary scoring option, forget about a championship. But if he's a weapon you use, sure, you could win a championship. Same thing with Kevin Love.
All right, guys. So Kevin Love's still on the show on Thanksgiving Eve, but it's Thanksgiving Day, so we need to get back to football. Who's going to steal the show today? When we come back, the whole Cowboys squad, we all know, they've been eating. They won 9 straight and face a tough challenge today against the Redskins. But before they get to eat their Thanksgiving dinner, we will break down more.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
I cannot wait. It's going down in the house that Jerry built. The Redskins have been heating up, winning 6 of their last 8, while the Cowboys, well, they've been hot. They're on a 9-game win streak. Much of that credit goes to each team's quarterback and Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott. So let's take a look at how these two have compared so far this season. Dak holds the NFL's second best total QBR at 84.5, while Kirk is just over 71. Now, their completion percentage and touchdowns, they're nearly identical, but notice the glaring difference when you see the interceptions. Cousins has 5 more. Stephen A., we've been hearing a lot about Dak this season, but who's actually had the better season thus far, Dak or Kirk?
Well, I'm going to shock the world here. I mean, it's been Kirk Cousins. And I know that there are people out there like, there goes Stephen A. again. The Cowboys hater. Man, I don't care. I could care less.
People out there, people right here.
Clear.
Yeah, I'm one of them, Stephen A.
You'll get your chance. You'll get your chance. Here's the deal. We all know Dak Prescott's a young stud. I can appreciate that. But I'm looking at a Kirk Cousins right now. Yeah, Matt Jones is all right, and this kid Kelly showed some promise over the last couple of weeks. I get that. But when you consider the troubles that the Redskins have had defensively, when you consider offensively, Kirk Cousins having to throw the football as much as he has. Take out the first couple of weeks, I guess, when they were 0-2. They're 6-1-1 over the last 8 weeks. Kirk Cousins got 3,000 yards passing. He's got 400 more yards passing than Dak Prescott. He's thrown 5 more interceptions. But that's primarily because he has to take risks that Dak Prescott really doesn't have to take, because Dak Prescott has that offensive line and he has Ezekiel Elliott. And Alfred Morris, a former Redskin, I might add. Not to mention Cole Beasley in between the seams as your slot receiver. Jason Witten, who's Mr. Reliable. And, of course, that was even before Des Bryant came back. And so when I look at how Dak is insulated to some degree, I'm not trying to take anything away from him because the kid is special. He's got a lot of promise. But I think when you see the onus that is placed on Kirk Cousins, particularly succeeding the RG3 era. And you look at a Garcon and a Deshaun Jackson in the last year of his contract, him being the franchise tag quarterback, betting on himself with that 1-year deal. Having a running game that's been inconsistent, explosive at times, but still relatively inconsistent. The same could be said about your offensive line. All of these things going on around you, and somehow, some way, you're Kirk Cousins, and you're having the season that you have had. I really, really believe that thus far, it's right there. It's not by a long shot or anything like that. But this is one of those rare occasions, Max, where I don't think QBR or the 5 interception gap tells the whole story. I think the onus placed on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins is entirely different than the onus placed on the shoulders of Dak Prescott. And I'm going to say that Kirk Cousins has had a slightly better season thus far.
Well, you can say that, and you will be wrong as usual. Dak Prescott's having a better season, and I am going to talk about QBR. It's second in the league, but really it's first because Tom Brady missed those 4 games. So, yes, on a per-game basis, Tom Brady's been better than Dak Prescott. But when you ask about total value over the course of the season, by the numbers, Dak Prescott has had more value than any other player in the NFL. Now, is he playing behind a great offensive line? Yes. Is Ezekiel Elliott helping him? Yes. The return of Des Bryant, before that, Beasley and these guys, Witten you mentioned, yes. It's all helped Dak Prescott. And Kirk Cousins is actually not just dinking and dunking recently. He's throwing the ball down the field, and he's doing it very well, and he was on fire against the Green Bay Packers. So, yes, he is at a disadvantage that way compared to Dak, but Dak's numbers are still better. So let's use the eyeball test and make some comparisons here if you want me to get away from the numbers. Do you know who Dak Prescott is, basically, Stephen A. Smith? A lot of people like to talk about Russell Wilson, and I get it. I see a lot of that there. Wilson drafted in the 3rd, Prescott in the 4th round. Game managers who are big on 3rd down. Russell Wilson more mobile than Dak, but Dak got his wheels are good enough. I see the comparisons there. But actually who Dak Prescott reminds me more of than anybody else is Tom Brady. Reminds me of a young Tom Brady.
Really?
Who had that look. The first time you saw Tom Brady, you said, who's that guy? He had a look of a winner, the way he handled things. And I think a lot of that was because Brady's always been the kind of guy to not force things. He takes what the defense gives him. If it's not there, it's not there. And so early on in Brady's career, he got all the kind of he's a winner credit, but not enough of the he's actually a great quarterback credit, because we look at game managers compared to guys like Peyton Manning who can make spectacular plays and shred defenses. We look at game managers and we use that as a dirty word. We tend to take credit away. In my view, one of the greatest things you can see in a young quarterback is game manager who's big on 3rd down. Yes, that was Russell Wilson. It was also Tom Brady. And that's who Dak Prescott reminds me of more than anybody else. A young Tom Brady is only going to take what you give him. He's big on 3rd downs. He's playing for a great team, and he's a winner.
Let me ask you this question. When are we going to take a moment to give Kirk Cousins some credit? They've got the number 3 ranked passing attack in the entire NFL. Their defense ranks 22nd against the run, 18th against the pass. Matt Jones and Kelly have been relatively inconsistent. Deshaun Jackson, 1 week he's healthy, the next minute he's not. Jordan Reed, 1 minute he's healthy, the next week he's not. You look at a Dak Prescott, nobody's trying to take away anything. I'm not going to even disagree with you on the Tom Brady front because he's got that it factor. Dak is going to be big time, it appears. But when you have that massive offensive line, when you've got an elite running back like Ezekiel Elliott, who's no question elite, this dude is just on another level, and you combine that with Alfred Morris, and then you've got a guy like Cole Beasley who simply continues to move the chains. You've got the Jason Wittens of the world, the veteran, future Hall of Fame tight end. You look at some of these things, and then you've buffered by a defense that ranks 3rd against the rush. If you look at the parts around Dak Prescott, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I'm just saying, to be a rookie, he's in a really, really elite situation because you talk about literally Dak Prescott walked into this season with them essentially saying, just don't make any mistakes because we got this running game with this offensive line. We're going to be all right. Plus, we're going to allow you to feed the ball, even though they've been taking more chances with him as the season has waned and he's picked up more of the playbook, and he deserves credit for that. When you've got a Witten and a Beasley and those boys really shielding you and cushioning you because you're able to avoid taking but so many risks because of short yardage situations. Not to say he hasn't made big throws at times because he has, but you're taking those short yardage situations. Then you look at Cousins, franchise tag $19.95 million, betting on himself. Understanding that the defense was going to be relatively suspect, even though that secondary were Breeland and Norman is big time. Understanding that Garcon and Deshaun Jackson in the last year of their contracts, looking to get something from them. A Crowder coming up out of nowhere. A Jordan Reed being a stud but not healthy. A Vernon Davis coming out of nowhere and producing for you. And you having to work within the confines and the terrain of this. And that, I know you read Pro Football Focus and all of these other things.
Who doesn't?
Jay Gruden, we got to give him his props in terms of record, but there have been a lot of NFL aficionados that have questioned his in-gamesmanship, his in-game management, and how astute or lack thereof he may be. Kirk Cousins is working with all of this. And somehow, some way, they got this record. He's already passed for 3,000 yards with 6 games to go. He's thrown 7 interceptions, that's true, but it ain't 14 or something like that. With all the chances that he's taking, I can't ignore that. I just can't.
It's nothing, by the way, and I'm taking nothing away from Kirk Cousins, who's a nice guy, rooting for him, unless they're playing the Giants. But he's having an excellent season. In fact, if they beat the Cowboys, and you look at the numbers, he's kind of forced himself into an MVP conversation if he puts up big numbers in that game. It's not, we could debate that another time. The point is not to take anything away from Kirk Cousins. And I also agree with the point that Dak has more around him. His job is easier. That's true. But just because your job is easier doesn't mean you aren't also better. They talk to talent evaluators around the league. You can have Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott. They're taking Dak Prescott. He's better, not only for the long run. So far this year, he's been better. By the way, Kirk Cousins also has yet to show. You talk about Dak Prescott being a rookie. Let's see him do it. Let's see. This is the first time he's going to face a team twice. Let's see how he looks the second time around. All that. Although so far, Ravens, hey, let's have Dak beat us from the pocket. Well, okay, and he beat him from the pocket. So, you can say all that, but Kirk Cousins last year had flashes of this, but was inconsistent. Well, this year is not over yet. Let's see if Kirk Cousins can keep this up.
Well, I agree. Whoa. I agree with that. I'm not refuting that, nor am I refuting that I would take Dak Prescott over Kirk Cousins because of what mistakes I've seen Kirk Cousins. Let me finish. Because of what I've seen Kirk Cousins do in the past. Dak Prescott doesn't have that history. Kirk Cousins has a very shaky history. But as of right now, through these first 10 games of the season, what I have seen, that's what this debate is predicated on. Also, let's keep in mind, Max, Kirk Cousins has thrown the football approximately 70 more times than Dak Prescott. So all I'm saying to you is that he's throwing the football more, he's taking more risk, and he's playing with a less with less of a potent offensive line and less of a potent running game. I can't ignore that. I don't want to sit up here and say Kirk Cousins is better than Dak Prescott, but I think the conditions under which he has had to perform
are more difficult, sure.
Based on what he's done, I got to give credit where credit is due.
Fine, but you are taking away credit from Dak Prescott if he's doing everything that's asked of him and they're winning. Bottom line is this. One quarterback's 9-1 and has the highest QBR of any quarterback in the league that's played all the games. That guy is the better quarterback. That's Dak Prescott.
Well, if you got an elite running game and an elite offensive line, you don't have to take anything away from a quarterback without appreciating the fact that they're buffered by a strong supporting cast. You can't ignore that either. You got to pay attention to the supporting cast. And I think that Dak's supporting cast is far better than Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins has still been able to do what he's done. I think he deserves credit for that. That's all I'm saying.
Look, quarterback evaluations are notoriously difficult because it's difficult to isolate their value apart from their team, especially their offensive line. But as you mentioned, also the running game and the receivers and the nature of the offense, the ball control offense, which also makes their defense better and therefore the team better. It is difficult to isolate their value. However, the best kind of tools we have are, for example, QBR, which say that Dak is better. And I'm sorry that Kirk doesn't have as much around him and his job may be more difficult, but now you're dealing in hypotheticals. What if his job wasn't more difficult? Could he then be as good as Dak Prescott? His job is more difficult, and he's not.
That's a very annoying analogy. We all prognosticate based on hypotheticals at times. We do it every day. We have to, because you foresee and you foreshadow. If that's the case, no NFL analyst needs to have a job. Because why the hell talk about it? You take things into consideration. That's part of your argument. How are you going to sit up there and knock somebody for sitting up there and looking at a hypothetical and saying, if he was on this team, you trying to tell me it's wrong to sit up there and say, what if Big Ben Roethlisberger was playing for Bill Belichick, or Aaron Rodgers? What if he was playing for Bill Belichick?
We can't ask that question. That's different when I do it, because I'm making the point.
I got it.
The egos we deal with.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
That's a good point.
All right, guys. So while we're showing quarterbacks love,
Turkey Day,
we can't forget about Matthew Stafford. He's been on the come up. Up next, Week 9, the Lions beat the Vikings.
I simply don't believe he could get it done. It obviously doesn't help him that Minnesota has had 2 offensive lineman starters out pretty much all of this season, at least one of them in Andre Smith. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and obviously Long is out as well, when I look at it from that perspective, I just don't have a lot of confidence in Minnesota's offense. I don't have a lot of confidence in Green Bay's defense, but I do have a lot of confidence in what I'm seeing from the Detroit Lions. I mean, what's this dude's name? Jim Bob Cooter? Is that his name? Is that the offensive coordinator? Yeah, I mean, you're unbelievable. Jim Bob, that's his name. But he's getting it done. Megatron is gone. He's retired. Did a damn good job on Dancing with the Stars the other day, by the way, but that's a subject for another day. But he's balling, and I just look at them right now. They have no running game. Theo Riddick is supposed to be back today. They hope he'll be back. He's a rough and rugged runner, but they have no elite running game. They rank 30th in the league in the rush. But nevertheless, their offense still manages to get it done. Matthew Stafford has been balling. He's got a QBR of about 70. He's got over 26 to 100 yards passing. He's already thrown about 17 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. And then you look at a 4-headed monster that they give to you. You got this kid Marvin Jones, who's a big, I don't want to say he's a big play receiver. He had big games. His best game was 205 receiving yards against Green Bay earlier this season. No surprise there. But he's your leading receiver in terms of yardage. But then you got Golden Tate, who's having an exceptional season. By the way, scored the winning touchdown, had 11 receptions against Minnesota. This kid Ebron, as your tight end spot, this kid can do some things. And of course, just the elder statesman, just a rough rider that manages to find a way to get it done in Anquan Bolden. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and you got 4 dudes as weapons in your passing game, with a guy like Matthew Stafford, who has proven he can come back and win games in the fourth quarter for you, because they've been down in the fourth quarter of every game they've won this year. And this is not the only year he's done it. I just look at Detroit right now, being that team on a come-up. Once upon a time, I didn't know if Jim Caldwell was the dude, but he seems to be doing a great job. And Jim Bob Cooter is getting it done as well. So let's make sure we give credit where credit is due. I see Detroit winning this game, and the way they're looking right now wouldn't surprise me at all if they won this division.
Vikings are going to win the game. Vikings are going to win the division. You bring up Sam Bradford and the lack of confidence in him. That's justified. The problem is the Lions' defense is 30th in terms of opponent QBR, meaning they're almost dead last. They're a couple spots from dead last in terms of how they elevate the opponent's quarterback. They're turning every quarterback into a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, and I expect that would continue against Sam Bradford. You have to think about Sam Bradford against the Lions as a much better quarterback than he actually is, even given the offensive line problems, even given the problems in the running game as a result of those offensive line problems and Adrian Peterson's injury. The thing about the Vikings that I think people are sleeping on right now is they have been special in the not-too-distant past, as in this season, about 5 or 6 weeks ago. I say this consistently. Only a handful of actually good and bad teams. Most other teams fall in the middle. There was a time where the Vikings looked to be one of the actually good teams, and then they ran into a 4-game losing streak. But that included the preseason, by the way. They're 4-0 in the preseason, started out the season 4-0, and had one of those defenses that you thought, maybe this is one of those defenses we're going to talk about, for a long, long time. Remember that Vikings defense in 16? Boy, that was all world. So they are capable of playing at that level defensively. The reason the Lions have all these fourth quarter wins is clearly because they're trailing in the fourth quarter. The Lions remind me a lot, and Stafford's having an excellent season, no doubt about it. He's had others, but this may be his best one. They remind me of my New York Football Giants. You're getting the results because you're winning those games late. Luck may be playing into that a little bit. You may just be getting a little bit lucky, but I don't see a fundamentally excellent team there. Even though they're playing at home, I think they are running into a fundamentally excellent defense at least, and given the Lions' defense, a better offense than they actually are. The Vikings I'm talking about now, because they're playing that weak defense. I like the Vikings to win the game. I like the Vikings to win a division where the only other threat is the Packers. And, I know Aaron Rodgers a couple of years ago,
the only other threat?
With a rash of injuries, got it together. But that doesn't look like this guy so far this year, Stephen A.
You think that the Packers are the only threat to the Vikings in the NFC North? You don't even consider the Detroit Lions a threat?
No, I'm saying the only other threat. If the Vikings win this game, they not only have the best record, but they also have that win against the Lions. The only other threat in the division is the Packers. And Aaron Rodgers talking about, hey, we're going to win out. And they did something spectacular a couple years ago when Rodgers had one of the greatest quarterback seasons of all time and compensated almost single-handedly for a rash of injuries to that team. But does the recent version of Aaron Rodgers appear that he's about to do something like that? If so, you can't count out the Packers, but I haven't seen evidence for that recently. So I am going to count out. I am going to assume if the Vikings win this game, they win the division.
Well, first of all, they've already lost to Detroit, so if they were to beat Detroit today, which I don't believe they will do, they'll have a split, and anything can happen over the course of the last 5 weeks of the season. Secondly, after Minnesota's game today, you got a road game at New Orleans, which will be tough, but then you got a home game against Chicago. You got road games at New York and Dallas, and then a home game against Green Bay. Detroit, to me, it could be very, very interesting because it's interesting how we sit here. We talk about Kirk Cousins. We talk about Matthew Stafford. We talk about Kirk Cousins, rather. We talk about Dak Prescott. We've mentioned Tom Brady. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers. We've talked about Derek Carr. How are we not talking about Matthew Stafford? It's the most important position on the football field, and this brother is balling. And by the way, it seems like he's been unleashed because when Megatron was on the field, like my man Teddy Bruschi was saying this morning on SportsCenter, you're trying to find Megatron all day, every day. Double team, triple team, don't matter. Get him the damn ball. But now that he's gone, Matthew Stafford is being very judicious, led by Jim Bob Cooter. And as a result, you're looking at it and you're saying, well, damn, who are they going to get the ball to? Is it going to be Bolden? Is it going to be Tate? Is it going to be Jones? Is it going to be Ebron? Who's it going to be? Who's going to make that noise? And I think that makes them very, very interesting because, again, you have to defend the whole field. Minnesota's capable of doing it, but what are they capable of doing offensively? I don't think much against the Detroit team. I really don't.
Against a subpar defense, really one of the worst defenses in the league. Look, the Lions are a lot like the Falcons or the Raiders, who are two first-place teams, and right now they're tied for first, or even the Saints, who are not a first-place team, these high-powered offenses that don't play defense. And here's a counterintuitive point, Stephen A. Smith. Here's a counterintuitive, 30th in opponent QBR. Here's a counterintuitive point about this game, Lions and Vikings. I actually think it's going to be a high-scoring game. That does not favor the Lions. A low-scoring game favors the Lions because if what you do is offense and not defense, if you're the fourth-quarter comeback team, then the lower the score, the more possibilities there are at the end of the game to win the game. If it really matches up where the Lions defense can't stop the Vikings offense, if they elevate the Vikings offense,
and the Vikings can start to Can't stop the Vikings offense. Stephon Diggs probably is not going to play today. Adrian Peterson is out. And Sam Bradford is your quarterback with your offensive line. Suspect. What do you mean can't stop Minnesota's offense?
The Lions defense hasn't been there this year, Stephen A. They're not good.
They're ranked 16th. They're ranked 17th and 18th against the rush and the pass. I mean, they're not great, but they're not awful defensively. They're not awful bad. Like the Raiders' pass defense.
Bad. Max, I'm with you that Detroit's going to win. That the Cowboys were going to win. And Stephen A., I'm with you on Detroit that they're going to win. Vegas seeing it the same way there. And also, side note, I'm happy to hear the Pistons are moving back downtown to play with the Lions. So that'll be good as well. And speaking of hoops, guys, Steph Curry was very thankful after last night's huge 43-point win over the Lakers. He tweeted a lot to be thankful for, #DevNation style. So did this win prove the Warriors have already ruined the NBA season, like Stephen A. says? We debate that next.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Kevin Durant has ruined the regular season with the reigning two-time league MVP, with the best shooting backcourt in the world that we've ever seen in the NBA. This is what we get. Everything is just ruined. It's just ruined. It's just ruined, okay? No answer whatsoever for the Golden State Warriors. They could put up 120 a night if they wanted to.
That was Stephen A. before the season started. About last night, though, Kevin Love and the Cavs dominated the Blazers, putting up 137 points, which was the highest point total in the NBA this season, until the Warriors took the court and scored 149 points in their blowout win over the Lakers. Stephen A., do you still think the NBA season is ruined?
Yeah. I mean, I've said it, and I'm not changing my mind in this regard. And, you know, let me be very, very clear. I love the game of basketball. I love it just as much as anybody on the planet. I love this game. If it were not for the NBA, I wouldn't be where I am today. I love this game. But I love the game because of the competitive fervor that came associated with the game. I'm watching the Golden State Warriors right now, and like I said, it's a testament to the greatness of Kevin Durant. I consider Kevin Durant to be one of the top 2 players on the planet. He is averaging 27 points on 16 shots. He is shooting 57% from the field and 42% from three-point range. This is who they added to the best shooting backcourt we've ever seen in NBA history in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And as a result, it's a foregone conclusion. I guess what I'm saying is I know that I'm in the minority. I know that people are looking at me and folks want to crucify me because of that. I get it. I understand it. Because if folks want to see blowouts and all of that other stuff, I get it. The last 2 games, they've won by 37 and 43 points, okay? You know, this year, 23, 27, 21, 24, 37 and 43-point wins. We ain't even really getting started yet. They're still trying to find their groove and develop chemistry and all of this other stuff. And they're not just beatdowns that are taking hold. It's annihilations. It's like playing a game of horse. They're toying with people, and they're just getting started because they've had some rough edges along the way while trying to develop their chemistry. All I'm trying to say is that foregone conclusion, because of the supreme greatness of Kevin Durant coupled with what already existed, is what turned me off. I'm waiting for the finals because I know what's going to happen, you know, in terms of Golden State, Cleveland. The other games where other folks are playing one another is very, very interesting. But the Clippers right now have the best record in basketball. And I'm sitting here telling you I'm not even taking them seriously. They have the best record in basketball, and I'm not taking them seriously. Okay, they come to the Western Conference Finals because they hate Golden State so much, and vice versa. Maybe, you know, something that'll get so tense, we might see, you know, I'm not advocating violence, but I want rough riders going at each other. But that's the only thing that I have to hold on to for hope. There's no one in the East that can touch Cleveland. And out West, how am I to believe in the Clippers?
This is one of the most interesting and exciting NBA seasons ever. Look, basketball is the greatest team sport, period, in the world. Oh, here we go. I'll fix that right now.
It's all right.
Basketball, okay. Basketball is one of the greatest.
They knew they didn't want to hear you talking basketball. That's why the mic dropped.
Stephen A. The mic drop is a sign trying to tell you something.
Whatever.
As soon as I talk, the mic drops.
Whatever.
Basketball is the greatest team sport in the world. It's the perfect team sport. That's why it's the fastest growing team sport in the world. And in this greatest team sport ever, you're actually complaining because a team that was already so good has now raised its potential to maybe unprecedented heights. So in the greatest sport, team sport ever invented, in the greatest league in that team sport, there is now an example of something that might be so good that nothing can beat it. And that's a terrible thing to watch, except that they don't have the best record in their own division, because as you mentioned, the Clippers do, except that they just added a huge new piece. And what we've seen from recent basketball history, especially LeBron and the Big Three in Miami, is until you really get reps in playing with each other, another team that's also excellent, that hasn't had to integrate a huge new piece or make huge changes, actually has the advantage. Making this eventual finals matchup that everyone agrees on, Warriors-Cavs, even more interesting. And the Clippers are still there. And I don't think they're going to go away. I think they're the kind of team that will have folks asking, wait a minute, maybe without Bogut and Ezeli and Spates and their bigs and having to integrate now Durant into this situation, maybe they're not exactly invincible. Maybe the Clippers can upset the apple cart. And the truth is that in most NBA seasons, you know who's going to play in the finals, or at least in the Final Four in the two conference finals. And usually you have a pretty good idea of who's going to play in the finals. And usually you have a pretty good idea of who's going to win the finals. In that way, this season is no different, except the stakes are elevated because it's going to be a rubber match involving two dream teams. And that's a bad thing?
Well, first of all, I didn't say that I wasn't looking forward to the finals. I mean, if you're going to get at my point, do you at least have the decency to listen to it and quote me accurately? I have no issue with the finals. I have an issue with the 82-game arduous task that you got to go through before the playoffs begins. That's what has me rubbed the wrong way. The fact that we've been stripped of any kind of suspense. Now, you could sit up there and make the argument. To me, the most poignant argument one can make, particularly yours, would be if you're talking about the Clippers and you're saying that the Clippers are a legitimate threat to the Golden State Warriors. In my opinion, the Clippers' best chance for a championship were blown a couple of years ago when Houston came back from that deficit in Game 6 at the Staples Center and outscored them like 49-9 with James Harden on the bench primarily for most of the time. Because the Golden State Warriors had not won yet, they were still trying to figure out how to win a championship, and I thought that was an ideal opportunity for Blake Griffin with Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan and those boys to take advantage of it, capitalize off of it, and win the championship. The fact that they failed to do so that year, and then Golden State has basically been the dominant fixture, and they know what they're doing now, the suspense dissipates dramatically. And then we got Durant with Steph and Clay. As a team, they're shooting as a team. They're shooting 50%
you made
of the
that
field.
Point. Let me make 2 points here. One,
50%.
When the Dream Team got together in the Olympics in '92, that was awesome to watch. And had the Redeem Team also been in those Olympics playing against the Dream Team, and you would have gotten that in the finals, that would have been even better. That's what we have this year. 1, 2. When you're talking about all the rest of the NBA, look what's happening. The baby Lakers are on the come up. The Knicks are relevant for the first time in forever. Chicago has something like all three of the major markets are more interesting now than they've been in recent years. In addition to what we just discussed, Westbrook, can he average a triple-double? James Harden, same kind of thing. There are all kinds of interesting teams in major markets and great players doing interesting things in addition to the Cavs and Warriors.
Once again, you're not listening. I never disputed any of those things. What I said was the suspense about the road to the finals as it pertained to Cleveland and Golden State. I openly acknowledged before the season even began those other interesting storylines, but they pale in comparison to Golden State and Cleveland. And there's no suspense in my mind with the two. And I would appreciate it if folks would stop bringing up the Dream Team. We never saw Magic with Michael and everybody on the same team. And it's a 2-week period over the summer, not 6 months of an 82-game NBA schedule. They don't equate.
Right. So the additional interest all over the league is that the goodness of that is outweighed by the badness of a rubber match between two dream teams playing at unprecedented levels.
I want to see great guys going up against one another, not joined together. That's my preference.
All right, gentlemen.
That's my preference.
We got to leave it there.
Before the finals.
We could also make a strong argument that football is the ultimate team sport. That's why we're going back to it. RG3, we can, Max. That's for another time. Is back, everybody. He's back at practice for the Browns. But should we still have any faith in him as a franchise quarterback? We'll break down. That's next.
Fake Robert. He's got time. Going for all of it. Again, looking for Robinson. 10-5. Touchdown, Redskins. Oh, my. 68 yards. And the Redskins take the lead. Looking. Going end zone. Man is open. No, short of the end zone. Niles Paul. And then he backpedals in. Touchdown, Redskins. Rolls to the right. Rolling. Fires. Back shoulder. Touchdown. Touchdown, Santana Moss. 3 touchdown passes in the first half for RG3. He's the man.
You gotta have faith. That was 4 long years ago when RG3 lit up the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. Griffin returned to the practice field on Wednesday for the winless Browns and is confident that he can be that guy again and looks forward to going out and proving it. Mr. Smith, do you have any faith in RG3?
No, I don't. I take no joy in saying that. I hope I'm wrong. I sincerely do. I like him. I think that he's gotten a bad rap on a personal level. I think he's a much better person than he's given credit for. But from a football perspective, he's 5-21 in his last 26 starts. The one game we saw him this season against the Philadelphia Eagles, he only completed 46% of his passes in a 29-10 romp. He doesn't want to run anymore. He wants to be a pocket passer. You combine that with the fact that he missed the entire 2015 season because the Redskins wouldn't even let him put on a uniform because they didn't want to be obligated to pay him $16 million. He ends up here in Cleveland now, so he's basically missed the past year and a half. Usually when you're a quarterback and you are out that amount of time, Max, it's one of those situations where you got to be a superstar in order to recover. Not just in terms of knowing a playbook and knowing the things to do, not even just in terms of having the confidence to do certain things, but just having that feel football-wise to be as effective as you need to be. I think so much has happened to him professionally, from a psychological standpoint, not just physically, that I have serious doubts as to whether or not he can recover from it. I hope that he can. I hope that I'm wrong. But if I had to bet my money on it, Max, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't.
He'll never be RG3 again. The rookie that I saw, who as a Giants fan, when I think of the players I feared in my lifetime watching football as a Giants fan, I think of him as one of those players that, those elite, like, oh, my God, I hated when the Giants played him. Just those 2 games as a rookie. I thought he was maybe the most devastating weapon in the NFL that year. And he'll never be that again, I don't think. Physically, he's not going to be that. I agree there's been some psychological damage. But you ain't got to be RG3 to be a good quarterback. You could be RG, 2 or even 1.5 will be quite enough. And a lot of what's happened is his brand is tarnished. The NFL, because there are only 16 games in a season, gives us very little evidence, small sample sizes with which to make kind of sweeping conclusions about people. And so we rely on their brand and how the kind of impression we get of them. So RG3 struggled in Washington after his rookie season, after the injury, eventually goes to a bad team, and then gets hurt. Our general feeling about him is it's fated not to be. But think about Cleveland for a second. The Browns, since RG3 entered the league, they've been through 10 different quarterbacks, and they have one of the worst QBRs, as a team, since the second or third worst in the league since RG3 was a rookie. I mean, they've been through all those quarterbacks. In RG3, they have a guy who they can start at the position who is going to be an improvement over what they've had, and who actually has some weapons. No, not Josh Gordon at the moment, or maybe ever, but Terrell Pryor, and he has Hugh Jackson working an offensive line that should improve over time. I think we should be hesitant to kind of jump to the feeling that because, or the conclusion that because we just feel like it's not going to work out for him, because after all, when he just got hurt again, that he can't be a good NFL quarterback. I believe he can be.
Well, listen, the question is, have I lost faith in him? And I would make the argument that RG3 has given us more reason to lose faith in him than he's given us reason to believe that he can be a good quarterback. Now, does that mean literally that he can't be a good quarterback? Of course not. But the question is, in terms of losing faith, he's given us cause for that. Now, it's not intentional, of course. He didn't choose to get injured. He didn't choose for a loading knot to damn near, amputate his leg. We understand that, but in the end, he's been out of the game for a while. And when he's been in the game, we haven't seen much from him since that rookie year. I've lost faith. I just have.
I've seen enough to think he can succeed in the NFL, especially if he can stay healthy and they give him an offensive line with some weapons. And I think the potential is all there for him, if not this year, then going forward.
One thing we all agree on, though, is that we're all rooting for him. We all want to see him do well. Coming up next, would you say thanks or no thanks to a prediction of Derek Carr winning MVP this season? Some of his teammates would be on board. Plus, do you think Aaron Rodgers and the Packers can win out? We'll debate these topics in our game of thanks or no thanks. That's next.
Broken play. Mark Sanchez scrambles up the middle, lost the football. It's picked up. He ran right to the back of Brandon Moore, fumbled the ball. Are you kidding me?
The butt fumble. Never heard of one until he did it. Your face ran into his buttocks.
I was like, whoa, what just happened? It was weird, man. It'll probably be on a blooper reel for a while.
We're so wrong for that, but we couldn't help it. One of our favorite Thanksgiving memories. Guys, how ridiculous was that play?
Hilarious. Oh, it was hysterical. I was laughing so loud he ran into his backside. That's why he fumbled the football. Think about it. And it wasn't like the football hit his backside. His helmet, his face hit the backside, and that's how he fumbled the ball. Honestly, that's one of the most hilarious plays in NFL history, without question. Without question, it will be synonymous with Mark Sanchez.
It turned the whole country into Beavis and Butthead. Like, you could just sit there watching. Yes. He ran into his butt.
All right, guys. So since it's Thanksgiving, let's get into the holiday spirit. And happy Thanksgiving to any of you just joining us with a little segment. It's called Thanks or No Thanks. Thanks if you agree, and no thanks if you disagree. Are we ready?
Thanks.
Yeah, that's right.
Max, this guy. Raiders linebacker Khalil Mack says that Derek Carr is the NFL MVP this season. Thanks or no thanks?
Who's setting this off?
Max Kellerman.
I'm going to say no thanks. I think that Derek Carr's in the running, but do I definitively give him the MVP at this juncture? No. No thanks.
No thanks. He is not the leader for MVP right now. That would be Dak Prescott. Let's see how Matt Ryan looks next time out, coming off the bye. Derek Carr is in the conversation, but no thanks as the leader for MVP at the moment. Tom Brady's not in the conversation.
He is.
Yes, he is.
He is. No. Max, Aaron Rodgers says his 4-6 Packers can run the table and finish 10-6. Thanks or no thanks?
No thanks. And I know he's done something like that before, as I mentioned earlier in the show a couple years ago, a rash of injuries, and yet his next level quarterback play elevated the whole team and brought him to the playoffs. But and even last year at the end, he really balled out toward the end of the season in that first playoff game, and even in the second one, almost won that game. He's not the same guy. No thanks.
No thanks, please. It's a waste of my time to even talk about this. Those receivers that can't get open, a secondary that is so atrocious it looks like Max could score 5 touchdowns on them. Complete waste of time. Of course, no thanks. Nothing to talk about.
That is a unanimous no. Let's stay in the holiday spirit. Stephen A. Darrelle Revis says that Brady could be the best quarterback ever. Thanks or no thanks?
It's a tough one, but I'm going to say no thanks because I'm still a Joe Montana guy. That's the only reason. Tom Brady is sensational. We all know that, but so was Joe Montana. I'm thinking about Brady and those 2 Super Bowl losses. I'm also thinking about Spygate and Deflategate, even though more so to Spygate than Deflategate. I'm just thinking about the things associated with them. I don't think about those things about Joe Montana. I just think about Joe Montana.
The answer is thanks. Brady already is the greatest quarterback of all time. Respect to Joe Montana, who was my favorite as a kid. He never had to play Eli Manning twice in the Super Bowl, who's the only quarterback, according to Nate Silver, rated ahead of Joe Montana as the most clutch quarterback in the history of the NFL playoffs. He never had to do that, so he's undefeated in the Super Bowl. Brady did, so he's got those 2 losses. But let me tell you who Tom Brady is. Tom Brady is Joe Montana with Dan Marino numbers. He's Derek Jeter with A-Rod numbers. He's Tom Brady now with Peyton numbers, the greatest of all time.
All right, Max.
Oh, he's also lost to Peyton Manning a couple of AFC Championship games. I'd just like to throw that in there.
Montana didn't go undefeated.
Details, folks.
Lawrence Taylor and company beat him up a couple times.
Talking more ain't going to help your argument.
Let's keep it rolling. Joel Embiid didn't play in the second overtime of the 76ers loss to the Grizzlies because of a minutes restriction. Thanks or no thanks?
Thanks.
I'm going to say
smart.
Yeah. Go ahead, Max.
That's smart. Like, what are the Sixers going to make the playoffs this year? I mean, he's coming off a catastrophic injury. You used the third pick in the draft on him. He's incredibly talented. He's showing areas of his game you didn't even know he could have. He can be a dominant, great player if he stays healthy. Limit the minutes.
I'm going to say no thanks because I think that in a game like yesterday, considering the paucity of wins that are at their disposal, you got 5 minutes for a second overtime. Play the man. He only played like 24 minutes. Play the man. And I loved his passion, by the way, the fact that he was so frustrated he didn't play. I like the fact he kicked over a chair. Didn't bother me at all.
I want to say happy Thanksgiving to the entire Kellerman, Smith family. Guys, enjoy. And to all of you at home, thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place.